This is Patrick Washington from the Tri-Cities Insight, and today we are with Gerry Rawlinson, candidate for House of Delegates here in the 63rd District. The primary election is June the 13th. June the 13th, that is next month. Anybody in the 63rd District, hurry up and get out there and make your voice known. Now, Miss Rawlinson, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. As you said, Gerry Rawlinson, and many people describe me as a businesswoman with a heart. I describe myself as a businesswoman, visionary person with a heart. And with that, I'm a business owner of 23 years and a registered nurse of 34 years. And also my businesses are in healthcare. But the principles of having successful businesses are the same regardless of the type of business that you have. And I married, have 2 children, live in the Petersburg area. I have companies in Petersburg, Richmond, and Chesterfield. And so I truly believe that I have demonstrated, when I say I'm a proven leader, that I've demonstrated the ability and the skill set to create jobs, maintain a business, and contribute to the community. So I firmly, a person, believes strongly in education, believes strongly in helping those individuals who are less fortunate than myself, and working closely with those individuals who have achieved, because we can all learn from one another.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, Miss Rawlinson, you will be running against incumbent Delegate Aird.
Yes.
Can you tell us the reason why you would be challenging her for her reelection in the Democratic primary?
Yes. Well, as like I tell people, and everywhere I go, I explain to people, I'm not running just to be running. It's very expensive to run and very time consuming. But I believe as long as we live in a land of democracy, that everyone has to be held accountable. And number one, have you done a good job? Now, how well a job someone does is relative to the person that you're speaking with. But I certainly don't believe in, whether it comes to that delegate or any other elected official, there is no such thing as entitlement, that just because you're in the seat and you're an incumbent, that you don't deserve to be challenged. And it gets to an issue of accountability. Delegate Aird campaigned on education, jobs, services for our seniors and veterans. She promised all those things. And if you look at her 2-year track record, as a chief patron for a bill, she didn't put in any bills for education. And Petersburg, well, the state of Virginia has 132 school systems. Petersburg is ranked 131. Hopewell is ranked 125. Ettrick, though it's Chesterfield County now, is ranked 25, but Ettrick, which is in the 63rd District, is an elementary school which is not accredited. So people say, well, people need to stop talking bad about Petersburg. Mm-hmm. Folks, nobody's talking bad about Petersburg. We're just stating the facts. And trying to sweep them under the rug like they don't exist, you're fooling yourself and you're not doing the people or the children here any good. We're doing them a disservice as long as we ignore it and try, as someone said, well, they just have to fake it till they make it. You can't do that. Our children can't wait. So she didn't sponsor in any education bills. And it's true, she did make a good accomplishment getting on the appropriation committee. Okay. She did. And they generally only say appropriations. But the committee that she was on, that's a large department. She was on the subcommittee for secondary education. At least that's what's out there on the General Assembly website. So you're on a subcommittee appropriations for secondary education. If you got in legislation for education, certainly we got to the point of funding it. One can only assume that you are in the position to really help facilitate that materializing into some additional resources to address problem areas in our school system. And people says, well, you know what assume is. I said, let me tell you something. I'm not worried about that name calling, what you say for assume. The reality is the reality. If we, and they want to imply that by being on that committee, that gives that person a lot of power and authority, we know how to use it. And when we get to the process, what are the outcomes? I tell people, don't just take language for it. Don't just take fake promises. Ask them, measurable. What are the outcomes? What did you do? 2 years. Some will say, well, you got to know the right time when to put a bill in. I said, well, what's the lottery number? Because unless you know the lottery number, we don't know. No one knows the future. So when is the right time? When she went in, President Obama was the president. We're a Democrat. Now we have Trump, a Republican. How they're doing business has changed. And you can very well miss a window of opportunity by waiting for what you think is the right time. See, I'm like Dr. King. It's always the right time to do the right thing. So when you put the bill on the floor to address the problem areas, they may vote it up, they may vote it down. I'll go forth that they're going to vote it up. Because what's happening in Petersburg is happening a lot in urban schools. And everybody could benefit from this. So when you don't put anything on the floor, they don't have to vote you down, do they? Because you did nothing. That's my position on that. The other reason that I look at running against her and pray and believe that I will be successful is people learn the truth about it. On April 5th, Governor Terry McCullough put in 27 amendments. And I'll give you that literature before you leave with the website. 27 budget amendments to the Republican budget. The Republican puts the budget in because they have the majority in the House of Delegates. Of the 27 amendments, 8 she voted against the governor. Now, I do not say, well, you should vote Democrat without thinking no matter what. I don't believe that. Because I firmly believe people should vote on the issues and vote intelligently. But some of the things she voted against him on. One of the bill, Amendment number 5, the governor said that, and I'm summarizing, but the literature I'll give you, it's a quote. It summarizes, say that if an individual is arrested and placed in a local or regional jail, and they display behavior that's indicative of mental health illness or instability, then they must get them a mental health assessment within 72 hours. I say that's a good thing. Because we don't need to have our mentally ill or mentally unstable folks in jail. Now, once they're medically stable, yes, then you go back and do your time. But the jail is not a place of treatment for people who are medically unstable. So I say we should get them the attention that they need. 50% of the prison population are drug-related charges. Yeah. So you may have someone that's mentally unstable because they haven't been taking a medication. You could have someone who is obviously addicted to a substance, and they're going through withdrawals, detoxification. Now, I'm a registered nurse of 34 years. I've seen people go through DTs. I've seen people go through withdrawals. Very paranoid, very aggressive, very agitated. It would not take much for that person to hurt you. And they don't intend to, but they're out of control because they're in a crisis. So we need to get them to the proper place for treatment. Why would you vote against that? We've got a drug problem right here in Petersburg now. Yes. But now I'm just not picking on Petersburg. Throughout this nation, they talk about the opiate addiction and the problems. So I say get people health care. Once they're medically stable, then you go back and do your time. But let's say you're in jail for something short and then they release you. But they had you the opportunity when you're displaying this behavior, or release them back onto society. Number one, that person's a victim to themselves because they were a place that could have gotten help and the opportunity was missed. The second thing, they come back into the community. Now, if you've got a drug addiction, you can commit crime sometime. Not always, but some do, to feed their habit. Who do they prey upon? Generally, it's the elderly. They generally, they'll go to lower income areas. Yes. And they tend to prey upon minorities. And I tell people, pretending that this 50,000-pound elephant's not in the room is not doing anybody any good, denying that this really is a problem. So she voted against that. And to me, that would have helped members of our community. Another one she voted against was Amendment number 10 and 11. 10, the first part was Governor McCullough wanted to put funds in the scholarships to community colleges so that people could get certified in cybersecurity positions. Mm-hmm. According to Governor McCullough, the Commonwealth has about a demand for 36,000 positions. He says the average salary for that position is somewhere in the $80,000 a year. Now, we didn't say you have to get an associate degree. We didn't say you have to get a 4-year degree certification to the community college. And in exchange for the scholarship funding, you would work for the state for a certain period of time. I don't know about you, but for folks that could get educational training and have a guaranteed job when you get out, full time at that, with benefits and a nice salary, I say it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, that sounds very beneficial for especially people in the 63rd. Now,
With the high unemployment rate,
yeah.
our poverty rate is 28.1%. I don't understand what people don't get.
Now, January 2018, we are going to have a new governor in January 2018. Now, if there is a Delegate Rawlinson, what will be the first bill you will introduce into the General Assembly?
It would be in education. And what I would do, I don't have the exact language for it, but it would be funding for education for reading comprehension program. So I'd like to do funding for students. If by a certain time after kindergarten, you are not even starting to read. In first grade, you're clearly lagging behind your peers. That's not your peers, but this area is a concentration sometimes of children lagging behind the state average. I'd like to do an extension of our school, extend the summer school group, that you don't have to be failing the course to come to summer school. But we do funding for that. And a lot of the resources are already there. We just have to lay the infrastructure for it. That children would have to come to summer school half a day. I don't think parents would complain. And when you come in, it'd be a computer-based instruction program. So the computer program would be individualized for that particular student. And he would read, do his work on the computer, and then check it. You would get instant feedback, not waiting for X number of weeks before we do testing. He would get immediate feedback, determine where his problem areas are. And then once you correct that, you build and get stronger. I'd like to have it as a computer-based program. The schools have computer labs. I'd like, the Governor McAuliffe already has a program for trying to get retired teachers to come back to work. We don't have to pay them benefits. And they're not viewed as double dipping, getting retirement and still working for the school system. It's win-win. And we get an older, mature teacher that can look at various learning styles and help the child to understand where we are. For Petersburg, a large percentage of our teachers are first year teaching, 1 and 2 years of experience. I want to go back to, even back in the old days, during segregation when the black schools had their old books. People were reading and doing well. A lot of it had to do with the instruction, and a lot of it had to do with the family structure too. But I would like to get a retired teacher to come in there and work with the children, supervise them, and then if the child still doesn't get it, but help them to understand what the computer is telling him, verbal instruction support along with the computer. So we can have 5 kids working on something, 20 kids working on something at the same time, but at their level. Whereas when you're instructing in a traditional classroom, the teacher's instructing 20 kids at the same time, you're not able to individualize it. So I'd like to have them to do that. And all kids like technology. So we're working on technology skills. We're working on that reading comprehension. You do that for an hour, then you get a break. Then when you come to school, you're going to get breakfast. Then you're going to go work on the computer. Then you get a break to go work on a center that integrates math skills, computation skills, because that works on critical thinking skills, how you process information. Then you do that for 20, 30 minutes. Then you get to go outside for recess for 30 minutes. Then you come back to the computer for more reading comprehension for 45 minutes. Then after that, you get lunch and you go home. Now, we already have the buses bringing children in for summer school. They're already serving lunch at the school. We already have the computers. The only thing we have to do would be to pay those teachers. The principals and administrative staff work year-round anyway, so your lights are already on. But what it would do, we would individualize that for a problem area. And we would look at some children and say, hey, we know where those kids are. We know who's failing. Primarily, it's African American males that is having a consistent problem throughout the state with the SOLs if there are certain factors. And I'm not labeling my brothers. I love them, but I'm tired of the system glossing by. We seem to be able to address and meet all the other needs. Come on now, folks. If you can, one more person tell me they predict the number of prison beds they need based on the SOL scores for third grade, I'm going to scream. So you do analyze them, and you do know. So we can look at the prison population, look at the demographics there.
Yes.
It's disproportionately my people, and it needs to stop.
Now, going with that, what is your view on mass incarceration, which negatively and disproportionately affect the minority community?
What would I do about that?
What would you do about it? How would you address it as delegate?
Well, key thing, education is the base. Work with this group, the children, so that they don't go into that pipeline. So education is the base, and skill training. So if you can read, they said it's a large proportion of those prisoners cannot read, have difficulty with read. They can pronounce words, reading comprehension. Yeah. If we can address this on the front end, then I'm hoping so many of my people are not there. But I don't say throw the ones away. They're there now. I don't think it's too late for them. What I like to do, especially for my youth, my young males, I'd like to have a discussion on the floor, and they could fine-tune how much discretion these judges have. See, the judges are elected.
Yeah.
They're appointed, appointed by the General Assembly. In North Carolina and other states, they elect their judges. So if you're biased, and I'm not saying judges are biased, but if the people disagree with how and don't think you're applying the law evenly and equally, they're going to put you out of there, and you ought to. Well, here, some kids did, let's say 2 teenagers, did the same thing. 2 19-year-olds did the same thing. One person gets community service, and if you don't get in any more trouble in 6 months, it goes away, never happened. The other young man, I hear it, and he gets charged with a misdemeanor. Yeah, it could have been more, but he's not going to get any jail time, so that's good. Come on now. If you did the same thing, he too should get community service and stay out of trouble for 6 months. It goes away. But people are happy if they're getting a misdemeanor and no jail time. Folks, now you've got a criminal record that follows you throughout.
Your life.
So, number one, you go apply for credit. It shows up.
Yes.
You go apply for a job. Now, the current delegate, she did put in legislation, which is part of ban the box that Terry McCullough did a couple of years ago. So I'm not quite clear on how it was really any different, but I think it may have been language clarification. I'm not sure on that. But it was about, on the application, you do not have to state whether or not you had a criminal record. And that is a good thing. I personally would take that a step further. If you have a misdemeanor on your record, no barrier crimes, nothing, really a misdemeanor, minor misdemeanor and all that, then in 5 years, if you haven't had any more problems, you just did something when you were young and dumb, it comes off.
Automatically.
Yes. And you just got one.
Now, going to that as well, now, what is your view on marijuana legalization here in the state of Virginia?
Well, can I finish that part about the other part? And then I will get to marijuana. The part and I said about it goes away, because I've got some ladies that work for me right now that are 68 years old, and they've got a misdemeanor from back when they were 20 years old. You pay more for your insurance. You pay more for credit that you get. And it just follows the person. And yes, you don't have to put on the application, tell me if you have criminal history, right? I pull a criminal record back and track on everyone I hire. When I get it back, well, you got the job, but now you can't keep the job. A lot of people, if you have a criminal record history, they will not hire you. So yeah, we got the job, but we need to go long term. Can you keep the job? And that's when I said, put a limit and take it off the record. But the other part, take away some of this judge's discretion. Anytime you get discretion, you get subjectivity. Yeah. And I know, love all the judges, and I believe they try to be objective. But I'm telling you, when I walk up, first thing, oh, she's a nice person. But the first thing you know about me, I was black. The first thing you may know is about my friend, she was white. Does it matter? Does it factor in? Does it factor in if you had a public defender versus a private lawyer? There's so many variables, and people do the best they can to be objective, but they're all human. So take out some of that leeway. Make sure Johnny and Paul gets the same punishment under the letter of the law. Now, going back to, would I support legalizing marijuana? Yes, I would. Because 50% of the people in prison are drug-related charges. Now, I know all the drugs aren't marijuana, but it's a business thing. It's like back in the day when the prohibition, don't legalize alcohol, but now we legalize it now. And they make a lot of money off of it. They're trying to privatize it, best to hurt. But, and the state gets to, the way they sell alcohol legal with the ABC board, they make a lot of money off of that. So I say, number one, it would cut down under that underground economy. We would have a decrease in crime. A lot of youth would not be dead 6 feet under. And we'd increase the revenue base for the state by taxing that money too. So we cut down the cost on the taxpayer for prison and prison people for it. And now, I wouldn't say just blindly do it. There should be some restriction. I do not think the time someone becomes 18, they're an adult, they can go buy marijuana. I would say you need to be at least 25 years of age, because at that point in time, you can think a little bit more long-term comprehensive.
You said 25 instead of 21?
Yes. Because
why 25 instead of 21?
Just because we have not studied the full effect of marijuana. We have it from a medicinal purpose. But what is the long-term consequences of marijuana? So starting off, you put at 25, that someone, number one, if you start smoking it for recreational purposes only, you're able to prioritize and recognize, no, wait a minute, I've got to go to work today. Number two, I may do this on the weekend, if that's what they're doing, and I'm not going to operate a vehicle. There's a big difference in the critical thinking and the judgment skills of a 21-year-old and a 25. It really is. I think it's awful you can draft a young man at 18, but yet you tell him he can't drink until 21. I mean, I don't believe in drafting an 18-year-old kid either, and frightening them to death and traumatizing them. And then when our veterans come back, they want to give them poor benefits and support. Yeah, that's another issue there. But 25, more maturity, better able to prioritize and make a good decision. 21-year-old, I remember when my son was 21, and I remember him now. He thinks a little bit more, and it's not saying that a 21-year-old can't make a mature decision, but age does help, and experience and wisdom does help.
Now, what would be the penalties if we do legalize marijuana and someone under the age of 25 do get caught with possession of marijuana or actually using marijuana?
Well, it'd be the same thing that we have anywhere in 21 with alcohol. So you have to, they've got to be consequences to people breaking the law. And you apply it consistently. So the same thing. Number one, who sold it to you? So we got to go back to the source. Same thing, if someone is giving alcohol to underage individuals, they prosecute those people who did that. So the same laws that we have for alcohol use would be for marijuana.
Now, to a different subject, what would be your view on Medicaid expansion here in Virginia?
I support Medicaid expansion. And supporting Medicaid expansion actually would save taxpayers money versus the way the system we have now. I support Medicaid expansion primarily because when we all get our paychecks, you pay the Virginia tax, you pay federal tax. Our money going up to the federal government. And because our part of the bucket, since they have not passed Medicaid expansion, our part of that Medicaid money doesn't come back to the state. We're subsidizing other states because it's left on the table. So we don't need to be in a position to subsidizing other people. Number one, that was one reason. The other reason would be we would insure more people with health care coverage. We'd have a healthier society. We'd have fewer people. They could get preventive care. Hopefully, if you got diabetes or hypertension, hopefully we could see you and give you treatment, get it under control before all of a sudden you show up and it's knocked out your kidneys and you've got to go to dialysis 3 times a week. Not only you got to go to dialysis 3 times a week, Then we got to provide you transportation 3 times a week. Then we've got to give you medications to help you. And then, well, you qualify for disability. Now, if we could give preventive care, you could have worked and paid into the pot, paid some of the taxes. You could have contributed to the bottom line. Versus now, your health has declined because you didn't get preventive care and routine care. So now we now see you in a crisis, and there are more consequences associated with the illness. I also support it because, number one, it would grow businesses. You know, a lot of people, especially big guys, they're all for Medicaid expansion. But you got this conservative group against it, and I'll tell you why the big guys are for it. You got the big guys who own the hospitals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you go to the hospital and you can't pay your bill, what happens? They'll try to collect it from you. But this is one way you got guaranteed money coming in. You know, now the example for like the opiate addiction problem, we weren't talking about it before, were we?
No, it wasn't.
Because it was happening in certain communities. I just have to tell it like it is. But now that we've got the Affordable Health Care Act, they have insurance now. So now that's a business opportunity. So I said, people, yeah, they care about people, and I believe that they do. But now we can get payment for that treatment. So now that's an opportunity to open up these community-based clinics. I totally support it. Bring the access to the health care to the community so people can get access, treatment, contribute to society, support their families, and be healthy and stable. So it'll grow jobs. It will cut down on hospitals and other organizations that cannot get paid for their services. So hopefully when you go to the hospital, they won't inflate your bill to try to offset the cost of this person who didn't pay. It would get our federal dollars coming back down here. We wouldn't be subsidizing the surrounding states that have passed it. And it would give people access to health care. And we'd have a healthier community. And we would pay less for health care.
Now, one other topic. What is your view on offshore drilling here in Virginia?
Well, and that's something, having researched a great deal, I support drilling for oil here.
So would you also support the Atlantic pipeline?
Well, then they start crossing folks' property. I'm from the country. But they call something called eminent domain. And if it helps people for the good, as long as they've done the research and said, hey, now many people said there are consequences and there are negative effects for the people whose property that is crossing and will impact their community. We need more research to say yay or nay in terms of that. But all other times we've made progress. And we had to say somebody had to sacrifice for the good of the community. So I support it. To tell you the truth, as long as it does not have a negative impact on people's health and the environment, I support it. If that keeps us being more self-sufficient, more jobs in America, and growing our economy, I support it. As long as there are not any negative health impacts and there are no negative environmental impact of it.
All right. Now, one last question. Now, this election is very interesting in Petersburg. In Petersburg, the financial issues in Petersburg, it seems like there is some type of purge in Petersburg because all the constitutional officers, all of them decided not to run for re-election. As delegate, Gerry Rawlinson, what would you do to help out Petersburg during their financial crisis?
Well, at that point in time, I'd really study, and they have the data. Study the data, and I know that they are having the authorities to look into some of the legal aspects of it. But I would study it exactly for nuts and bolts. The audit that was done by the state and all the other audits that they've had, and then have the state to come in and do another audit now. So I think it's important that they do another audit when these constitutional officers leave and the new people come in. They need to know what they're inheriting if you're going to put a proactive plan of action in place. Now, the current delegate has said in the newspaper when this started happening, she stated that she was with them all the way. And said things she's done about it. Now, which I thought was a bold statement, not knowing the facts, because that's a local issue, and the state issues, the state delegates' hands are tied to some degree. But they claim that they have the part of the bill and funding to come back to help train our people that are taking these city councils in these positions, that they're going to be skilled and competent and qualified to do that. The key thing is we've got to really get the books correct. And then number one, if there are any improprieties here, say you need to do something about that. We won't get it back. But what part I have never understood was, and since I don't get into it at that level and haven't been exposed, people have to be bonded. In my business, I have to be bonded. Well, why isn't the insurance company paying off for some of this? Has anybody made a claim? Mm-hmm. But the key thing is, number one, is to come down and offer them support and go to the state and ask for support for the locality to come down. You can ask for it. And like they had in the paper last year, Delegate Kirk Cox from Colonial Heights and all said there would be no bailout for Petersburg. They weren't even in session. How do you speak for 100 delegates? And how do you not ask? I would ask. And I know there are separations for a lot of it with the Dillon laws and everything that impacts here. I get that. But I would research exactly what can be done in terms of that.
Now, how would your relationship, what is your relationship with State Senator Dance?
Well, I know her, and she's been very clear, and as she calls Delegate Aird her protege, so she's been very clear on who she's in support of. But, it's like I say to everybody, I envision winning, being victorious, and I would hope that Senator Dance will work for the good of the district with whoever wins. And she has a duty and a responsibility to do it in terms of that. So I would just hope that everybody would be proactive and productive.
Now, you mentioned Delegate Kirk Cox, who is the speaker designate. Now, before I let you go, I would like to ask the question, how would you see yourself having a working relationship with people across the aisle?
I'm glad you said that. I've always said my hand will reach across the aisle, but it won't come back empty. And see, that's the thing. You cannot get anything done staying in your box. As a business owner of 23 years, I've had to negotiate and work with an uncomfortable situation because, number one, what is the long-term goal? And if you stay focused on what the long-term goal is for the success of the Commonwealth, that's a goal. But in the course of that, the 63rd District is part of this Commonwealth. And all the progress cannot be happening around it. So everybody goes along, gets on the bandwagon of success. Opportunities to other areas come to 63rd as well. And that's how it works. Back years ago, when we had the flight, the white flight from the cities to the suburbs, the school formula was tweaked a little bit to give the counties in those areas additional funding, so to speak, to help them build their school programs. Now their programs are performing very well. Yeah. Well, I would say now, tweak that formula back. The urban schools are performing poorly. Can't you help me? Yeah. And so I think that's what we've got to do. See, I'm a business owner of 23 years, and I get it. And I went into business, number one, to show my children that we can create our own opportunity. And as people have said, until our race of people, now I represent everybody, but until a race of people achieve social economic empowerment, they will not be respected, they will not be at the table of opportunity, and they will not be taken seriously. So I approach everything like it's a business, and of course with the good Lord in mind. But it's business. When you go and you advocating for your district, it's business. When I go and I'm advocating for our schools, because number one, these parents are taxpayers too. Mm-hmm. We are part of the group, not a charity case. If poverty continues to grow in this segment, eventually when this segment cannot afford to assist that poverty population, it gets in an upside down situation where you go into the counties. Now poverty is already growing in the counties. Statistics show that. Poverty went up when the economy got really bad in 2008, 9, that era. But people are still moving over. So you're moving over. And I'm not saying, well, you should help this area if you don't want people of poverty levels coming to your area. No. We all have a duty and responsibility to give back and help all. At some point in time, everybody in this world has been helped. Even when you have people, when you went to college, if you got a grant, that helped you along your way. Even for, like Chesterfield County, they have it, and you go in there and start your business there. The first $300,000, you don't pay taxes on it. But 301, you start paying taxes on it. And that's a good thing. So that's a help up to the business starting now. It really is. So what form it comes in, we all got to work together. And I never go from a perspective of anything in entitlement. Everything that happens is achieved. How does it benefit society as a whole? I help that young child that may not come from a strong family background, but we give him free lunch, breakfast and lunch and dinner. That's a healthy child. A child with adequate nutrition can learn. That child will grow up, may be the president of the United States, may create jobs and opportunity. It happens. Everybody will give back and help. So as the Bible says, to much is given, much is expected. So, and when we talk about the Commonwealth and working with them, you just got to take a business approach so that, and you make it win-win. But always, you got to represent this group. Now, this group may be a lot of low-income people, but what I still said income, they pay it in. Now, maybe they get back, and someone made a joke to me one time, and I said, that's not a nice joke, but let me give you an answer for it. And I said, well, they really don't pay any taxes because they get the earned income tax credit. That's true. And why do you think they give them the earned income tax credit? They spend it, right? When you put money back, and they're consumers, it's sad, but when you put that money back in the economy, it helps the economy grow. They didn't give it to you for to put in the bank. If they put it in the bank and they hoarded it, they wouldn't keep giving it to you. It's to put money back into the economy. Now, let's say Sally gets the earned income tax credit, $3,000. I've got a car lot over here. She buys a car for me. I'm middle class. I own my own business. But I wouldn't be in business long if Sally didn't come buy that car from me. Same thing. You give food stamps. People need a SNAP, they call it, and that would be correct. Number one, for adequate nutrition, and Lord knows we need that. But the other side of it, too, when she goes buy food at Food Line, Martin's, what's that big grocery stores? We have Food Line here. Walmart. Oh, yes, Lord, Walmart. Walmart, I have some Walmart stock. That's a publicly traded company. It keeps the economy going. It keeps the economy going. It keeps it going. So everybody plays a positive role. You know, and people always talk badly about food stamps, and they think it's for people that don't want to work. That's not true. It's for people that have low wages. In order to make ends meet, they need assistance with that. And even when food stamps went up, they used to call President Obama the food stamp president. I said, that's a terrible thing. But we had a lot of whites on food stamps when they lost their jobs. So at the same time, your need was no different than another person's need. We had an increase in that particular group. But I tell people, you have to be mindful why we really got food stamps. Food stamps really came about back when they had drafting men for the war. And they were so underweight and slightly malnourished that they put the food stamps out there so they can have healthy men for the war. But it did so good to help fuel the economy. You see what I'm saying now? They kept it going to help the poor and disadvantaged. It's the same thing when we have Section 8 housing, right? I've got a house for Section 8, for example. But this individual needs affordable, quality housing. Well, the person who owns the house, they just made money now, right? So they take and spend their money, right? And then the government says, well, now I'm going to tax that house. The government just made money. You see, it all goes around. It keeps right on circulating. One hand washes the other. So I always tell people say, well, how will you do this at the General Assembly? I'm going to come from a business perspective. This is the need, but this is the long-term benefit. And this is how everybody in society is going to benefit. The one area I don't want benefiting are all these privatized jails. They're for profit in terms of that. But I'm in favor of people making profits. I'm pro-business all day long. I just hate to see so many people go to that area. I think we could get a business in another area and invest in a different way. But I take a business approach to it. I understand business very well. And I understand assets and I understand liabilities. We always want to approach individuals as an asset and not seeing the individual as a liability. And then we have all these measures, but we're all paying in. Everybody's paying in. And I think everybody should reap the benefit of our system in which we all contribute to.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Rawlinson. We do appreciate you speaking to Tri-Cities Insight, and we're going to wish you all the best on your election, on your campaign.
Thank you.
June the 13th, everybody should be there. What, polls open at
6 a.m.
6 a.m.
until 7 p.m.
Till 7 p.m.
All polling stations are open.
Yes. All right. You have a beautiful day.